I want you to picture a city wide awake in the dead of night.
Just if you're sitting in a dark room right now listening to this, just let the atmosphere of that image settle around you.
Yeah, imagine a city humming with this restless, anticipatory tension. It's the kind of heavy atmosphere that almost physically thickens the air.
Right, where every shadow feels significant.
Down the stone corridors of power, rumors are moving like smoke. You have whispers of a grand strategy being hammered into shape. The final, agonizing deliberations over an impending, massive invasion.
It really is the absolute precipice of war.
Yeah.
You're looking at the calm before a completely world-altering storm.
Exactly. Welcome to today's deep dive. We have a truly extraordinary piece of source material in front of us today.
We do, an excerpt from a historical account titled Chasing Death, Episode 15, The Fall of Memphis.
And our mission for this deep dive, it's not just to break down the sheer brutal mechanics of a military conquest, though we are absolutely going to do that.
Oh, definitely.
But we are taking you on an immersive journey into a tale of espionage, calculated deception, and the devastating personal cost of victory.
Because the stakes here, it really cannot be overstated. The entire invasion of Egypt hangs in the balance.
Yeah.
As we open the events of this account, Hannibal and his generals, along with the governor of Elam, have been waiting in sealed private chambers.
Just sitting there in the dark.
Right. They've been sitting there with this quiet, impatient intensity, all of them waiting for one man.
Zayn.
Zayn.
He's a scout, essentially a deep cover spy, and during the first watch of the night, he rides into the city of Elam. He doesn't waste a single second.
No, he spurs his horse straight toward Hannibal's palace, dismounts without any ceremony at all, and is brought immediately into those sealed chambers.
And you have to consider the psychological weight of this specific moment. Zayn has just returned from the land of the pharaohs.
He's been operating deep behind enemy lines, a place where a single misstep, it means torture and death.
Yeah. When he enters the room, Hannibal studies him with the measured patience of a man who is accustomed to waiting. But, well, who doesn't like it?
Hannibal's eyes are just searching Zayn's face, seeking confirmation. He tells him, we hold to the hope that you have not come back from the land of the pharaohs empty-handed.
And Zayn, with the steady, unhurried confidence of a man who knows he holds all the cards, replies, "How could I have set foot in the land of the pharaohs and returned without what I was sent to find?"
Chills.
He tells Hannibal he has secured every piece of intelligence they need. Okay, let's unpack this, because what Zayn does next is the spark that ignites the entire war.
With a practiced motion, he unrolls a leather map across a heavy wooden table.
And the detail here is, it's beautiful but haunting. Zayn drafted this map himself.
You can imagine him bent over a guttering oil lamp in some small Memphis inn, committing every single line to hide as much as to paper, knowing that if it's found, it's his death warrant.
When he spreads it out, Hannibal, the governor, the generals, they all lean in instantly.
Zayn points to a cluster of symbols right near the center of the map. He identifies them as the pyramids of the ancient pharaohs.
But it's what is directly behind those pyramids that matters. A rugged hill. And inside that hill, completely hollowed out and concealed from the outside world, is a vast, cavernous hall.
That is where the Egyptians have stored their catapults.
Hundreds of them.
Hannibal's reaction is just this immediate gleam of triumph. He realizes that Pharaoh Maharka's entire arsenal of siege engines is gathered in a single, highly vulnerable location.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, what's truly fascinating here is how Zayn actually acquired this information.
Right. Because this wasn't a matter of him sneaking past guards in the dead of night like a cat burglar. It was an act of chilling psychological intimacy.
Okay, yes, here is where it gets really interesting and honestly incredibly dark, because you have to wonder, how does a spy get inside a highly classified hidden mountain bunker?
He couldn't have just slipped through the front door.
Well, actually, he did walk right through the front door.
That's the crazy part. He posed as a Syrian physician. Zayn found a high-ranking Egyptian commander, a man who had access to this facility.
And he didn't just offer him some herbs or a soothing potion?
No. Zayn actually performed delicate, invasive surgery to relieve this commander of a chronic, debilitating pain in his skull.
Wait, he actually opened the man's head, a full-blown surgery.
He did. He cured him. And by ending that man's agonizing suffering, Zayn earned the commander's absolute, unquestioning trust. He earned his profound gratitude.
And then
Zayn weaponized that gratitude.
wow.
Because of the incredible trust he had built, Zayn was granted free passage into the hidden mountain facility As an honored guest, he was permitted to walk among the war machines and see them with his own eyes.
Remind me to never complain about my doctor's bedside manner again. That is terrifyingly brilliant.
He traded the ultimate act of healing for the ultimate betrayal.
You don't just get access, you get a blind spot. He never even suspected him. Hannibal listens to this account, and you can see something close to awe settle over his features.
He tells Zayn, "Physician of Syria, you are worthy of the highest rank in any army in the world."
With the catapults located, Hannibal asks for the numbers. What kind of forces does Pharaoh Maharka actually command?
Zayn lays it out methodically. Since taking the throne, Pharaoh Maharka has initiated sweeping military reforms. Crucially, he enacted a substantial raise in his soldiers' wages.
This wasn't just generosity, it was a highly calculated political move to bind the army's loyalty directly to him, rather than to local lords.
Because of this, he commands 50,000 infantry and 25,000 cavalry.
That is a massive force, and Zayn notes that half are garrisoned just outside the city walls, and the rest are in stone-roofed barracks right around the royal palace.
But then Hannibal asks the million-dollar question, they're elephants.
And Zayn's answer brings a grim smile to Hannibal's lips. The Egyptians have very few elephants, and most of them are kept in Memphis simply as beasts of burden.
Right, they are used to haul the heavy catapults around, rather than being trained as beasts of war.
Hannibal replies that his own forces have 500 elephants. Animals that will, in his words, roll over the pharaoh's lines like a tide over dry grass.
So let's tally this up from a logistical standpoint. Hannibal has those 500 elephants and an army of 70,000 men.
But there is a grave concern that cuts right through his confidence.
The catapults.
Yeah.
Even with superior numbers and war elephants, Hannibal knows the Egyptians are unmatched masters of the catapult. There is no army in the world that handles them better.
Let me pause you there, because when we think of catapults, we often think of them just knocking down castle walls. Why are they such a terrifying threat to an army of 70,000 men on an open field?
That's a really great distinction to make. In ancient warfare, a battery of well-trained catapults can shatter an advancing army before swords ever clash.
They launch massive stones or incendiary payloads into tightly packed infantry formations.
It destroys morale, it breaks the lines, and it turns a disciplined advance into an absolute slaughterhouse.
If those siege engines are brought to bear, Hannibal's forces could be decimated before they even reach the walls of Memphis.
That is why Zayn's map is declared to be worth more than a regiment.
This intel completely changes the game. Hannibal's voice hardens to iron. He tells his generals, "Pharaoh Maharka cannot escape us now. His defeat is already written in the stars."
The order is given. The final preparations for the invasion begin.
And this council presses on deep into the night. They formulate a masterful, ruthless plan.
Hannibal proposes sending a specialized commando unit into Egyptian territory ahead of the main army to put the catapults to the torch.
But Zayn refines the idea. He argues they should hold off on the sabotage until the very night before the general assault.
Right, to maximize the psychological terror.
Zayn understands that if you burn them too early, the Egyptians have time to recover their wits and change their strategy.
He wants the panic to be fresh, raw, and absolute when the attack comes.
They also agreed to send a second team to burn the elephant stables at the exact same moment. That would drive the pharaoh's few beasts into a blind stampede right through their own lines.
It is a brilliant strategy of total destabilization. By the time dawn breaks, the war machine has already begun to move.
And I want you to visualize the sheer scale of what happens next because the logistics are staggering.
For a full week, the armories in Elam ring without rest. Hammers on iron, bellows roaring. Bows, arrows, spears, and swords are being produced in quantities that strain every single forge in the city.
And then the 70,000 men take to the road, pointing themselves toward Memphis. But you don't just march 70,000 men and 500 elephants in a straight line, do you?
No, they actually move in 10 separate divisions.
It's a massive logistical necessity, but also a security measure.
Exactly. 10 routes preserve secrecy as long as possible. But more importantly, it eases the burden of supply. You cannot feed and water that many men and animals on a single road.
So, the infantry boards great ships making for the mouth of the Nile. Chariots roll along the riverbanks.
The elephant corps keeps to the open plains, specifically avoiding mountain passes that would slow them down or cause injuries.
And Hannibal himself rides at the head of the cavalry.
For 11 days of hard, relentless travel they move. Finally, they converge at the Egyptian border, drawing together into a single massive force.
It's like moving a mid-sized city across a continent.
But secrecy has its limits. Egyptian agents had caught the scent of this movement long before the border was reached.
The full weight of the news arrives at the palace in Memphis. Hannibal has crossed out of Africa and stands at the gates of the empire.
For Pharaoh Maharka, this isn't just a distant warning. It is a reckoning on his doorstep. And Maharka responds with the fierce desperation of a man who fully understands the stakes.
Maharka doesn't just hide behind his walls, hoping for the best. He orders the gates of Memphis bolted, throws heavy guard units over the hill of catapults, and marches 60,000 men out of the city.
He sets them in formation across a broad, sandy plain, entrenched deeply among the dunes. He is waiting for the invader to come to him.
And he prepares a lethal welcome on the city walls behind them.
Archers take their positions, and great iron cauldrons of oil are hauled up and set to boil over open flames, ready for anyone who attempts to scale the heights.
It is a formidable, deeply entrenched defensive position. So if you are Hannibal, how do you break a 60,000-man defensive line that is backed by walls pouring boiling oil?
You do it with a stroke of calculated deception.
Let's look at the deployment. Hannibal holds 20,000 men back in reserve. He takes 15,000 men, equips them with fire and resin, and sends them on a wide arc around to the catapult hill.
Completely out of sight of the pharaoh's lines.
That leaves him with 30,000 men. He advances those 30,000 directly against the Egyptian camp.
But his true intent is brilliant. He isn't advancing to break the camp. He is advancing to hold it, to fix Pharaoh Maharka's attention and keep it entirely focused forward while the trap closes behind him.
The battle opens with a roar that literally rolls across the dunes. Arrows and spears darken the air. The smell of blood and dust rises thick under the desert sun.
It's brutal, grinding combat, and while these two main armies are locked together on the plain, those 15,000 saboteurs close in on the hill near the pyramids.
They overwhelm the small garrison Maharka posted there. They force open the mountain doors, and there it is.
Row upon row of massive wooden catapults arranged exactly as Zayn had described.
The saboteurs work with brutal, sweeping efficiency. They drench the machines in resin and oil, and they set them alight.
Think of Zayn's sabotage like a modern-day cyber attack that takes out a country's entire missile defense system right before the bombers fly in. It completely neutralizes their biggest advantage.
Sit with that image for a moment. Out on the plain, Pharaoh Maharka is fighting for the survival of his empire. And then he looks back and sees it, thick, black columns of smoke billowing from the sacred hills.
You can imagine Maharka in this moment. He is completely shaken to his core. He understands in an instant what that smoke means.
But he refuses to abandon the field.
He actually leaps down from his command elephant, mounts a fast horse, and spurs toward the hill himself. He arrives to find the cavern mouth belching fire. The interior is already a roaring furnace.
His great secret weapon is just ash.
And the psychological impact of that smoke on the horizon cannot be ignored. When word reaches Hannibal that the artillery is gone, he stops holding back.
He throws everything forward. The assault becomes ferocious and unrelenting.
The Egyptian lines, already wavering and terrified at the sight of the smoke behind them, begin to buckle and break.
Hannibal personally drives into them, cutting through the disintegrating ranks. The pharaoh's army collapses into a full-blown rout,
streaming back toward the safety of the city walls in desperate disorder.
Hannibal pursues them to the very gates, leaving thousands of Egyptian dead marking the path behind him.
But taking the field is not the same as taking the city. Hannibal draws up at the walls, reforms his lines, and sends his elephants forward to batter down the gates.
This is where Maharka's gruesome preparations take their toll. The defenders on the battlements respond immediately.
They tip the cauldrons.
Great, scalding cascades of boiling oil pour over the parapets. The screams of men and beasts tear through the air as the elephants thrash and die beneath the walls.
It is a horrific, chaotic scene. The armor of the soldiers literally cooks them alive. Hannibal is forced to pull back, ordering a temporary withdrawal to tend to the wounded and take stock.
That night, a council gathers in Hannibal's tent. The mood has shifted entirely. The generals are subdued. Their earlier confidence has been severely tempered by the reality of those walls and that boiling oil.
One general puts forward a very standard, by-the-book military proposal: a siege. Let hunger and thirst do what swords had not. Starve Memphis into submission.
Right, and it makes sense. If storming a wall with boiling oil is suicide, why wouldn't he just wait them out if the victory is eventually guaranteed?
But before that idea can even take root, Zayn speaks up. He says, "Your Majesty, I know this city. They have grain and water enough to hold out for a full year."
And Hannibal's response is cold and absolute. I will not wait a year.
The way he says it closes the matter entirely. A year-long siege means disease in the camp, it means vulnerable supply lines, and it gives the rest of the empire time to rally.
There will be no siege, there will only be blood.
The following morning, the army comes forward like a force of nature. It's a brutal, chaotic push.
Soldiers advancing behind great shields, hauling heavy wooden ladders through a relentless arrow storm. They press on through the cascading oil, stepping over the burning and the dying.
Until the first of them claw their way over the battlements and seize the towers above.
That is the turning point. The breach galvanizes Hannibal's main force. They surge toward the gates in a massive wave.
The elephant handlers drive their surviving animals forward with desperate urgency, and the great beasts hammer the heavy wooden doors until the hinges finally give way and fall.
Memphis is breached. The victors flood through the streets. And what follows is dark.
Fire spreads rapidly through the quarters. There is systematic ransacking of everything that can be carried.
But Hannibal isn't interested in the looting. He rides straight through the chaos, making directly for the palace.
At the palace gates, Pharaoh Maharka makes his final stand. But it's a tragic, isolated moment. His guards are already melting away, slipping into the chaos of the fallen city to save themselves.
Hannibal meets him there. With a single sweeping blow of his sword, Hannibal ends the pharaoh's life.
The severed head of the pharaoh is raised upon a spear for the army and the city to see.
Hannibal enters the palace as its undisputed master. He takes the queen into custody, confines the princesses, and then he lifts the golden crown of the pharaohs and places it upon his own head.
Seated upon the throne, he issues a proclamation to the remnants of the city. He declares the age of the old pharaohs finished. But notice what he says next. "I am not a god. I am your king, Hannibal."
That is a profound shift in political reality, isn't it?
It's an absolute masterstroke of statecraft. The pharaohs were considered divine. Hannibal deliberately positions himself as a mortal ruler. By lowering the rhetorical stakes, he makes himself more acceptable as a pragmatic administrator.
He isn't asking them to change their religion to worship him. He's just demanding their civic obedience.
And he immediately makes strategic promises to pacify the population. He promises relief from unjust taxation and the freedom to worship as they always had.
With that single proclamation, the looting is ordered to stop. And it does. But the damage it left behind could not be undone.
Which brings us to the aftermath. The military victory is complete. The political transition has successfully begun.
But what of the human cost? This is where the narrative shifts, and the true heavy weight of the invasion is felt.
Well, let's lower the lights even further here, because while Hannibal sits on a golden throne, solidifying his empire, Zayn is walking through the wreckage of the city.
Just weeks before, he had moved through these same streets quietly as a stranger and a spy. Now, he passes the inn where he had lodged.
The owner, the innkeeper who gave him shelter and a place to draw his map, lies dead in the rubble at the threshold.
Zayn continues through the smoldering city. He makes his way to the house of the Egyptian commander.
The man whose skull he had opened. The man whose chronic pain he had ended.
The man whose deep trust he had used to find the catapults. The commander is dead. And it's worse than just dying in battle.
His head has been fixed upon a spear outside his own home. He has been labeled a traitor by the very victors he had never served, simply because he let Zayn in.
Zayn's actions didn't just doom the city, they destroyed the legacy and the honor of the man who trusted him with his life.
Zayn learns that the commander's wife has been taken to the palace along with the other noble women of the city. Something settles heavily in his chest.
This woman had been incredibly kind to him when he was nobody, just a foreign stranger passing through their city. She had asked absolutely nothing in return for her hospitality.
Zayn makes his way to the women's quarters in the palace. His standing as Hannibal's chief confidant is enough to silence the guards, and he passes inside.
He finds her sitting beneath a tree in the courtyard. Her hair is loose and disordered, her eyes completely hollowed out by grief.
When she looks up at him, there is no warmth left. It's described as a cold, scorching hatred that does not flinch.
She looks at the man she welcomed to her home, the man who healed her husband, and she says, "You are Hannibal's spy. You came into our home. You took our trust and you used it. I loathe the very sight of you."
Her voice is barely above a whisper, but it is harder than the stone walls around them.
It is a devastating reality. The city has been won, the empire has expanded, but at what intimate cost?
This raises an important question, something for you to ponder in the dark as we close this out. In the grand, sweeping game of empires, military strategy, and survival, does the weight of personal betrayal ever truly wash away, even when the war is won?
How does one balance the greater good of a sweeping victory against the intimate, irreversible destruction of human trust?
And taking it a step further, if a person's ability to trust is completely destroyed by a victory, how can the victor ever experience true human connection again? If trust was merely a weapon to Zayn, can he ever be a man of peace?
It's a heavy thought to leave you with, but an important one to consider the next time you hear about the sweeping victories of history. We want to thank you for sitting in the dark with us tonight and joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.